Masechet Sotah Daf Kaf He. We have 3 questions today about whether a husband needs to warn his wife in certain cases of dat, and whether he can forgive a wrongdoing of his wife in the case of dat and the case of Sotah. So we begin. Ibaya lehu. Ovedet al dat. Sericha hatra lafsidat ketubata o ena sericha. This is relevant to Sotah because to make a wife a Sotah, the husband has to warn her first. Do not seclude yourself with that man. And so now we're wondering if a woman violates dat. This comes from Masechet Ketubot that mentioned that a woman will lose her ketubah if she violates dat Moshe and dat Yehudit. Dat Moshe would be biblical violations. For example, if she doesn't go to the mikveh and she doesn't tell her husband, and so she is nida, so she is causing her husband to violate a problem of nida. Dat Yehudit is a more customary thing, like she doesn't cover her hair in public, and so she refuses to do that. Both of these items, if a woman violates either dat Moshe or dat Yehudit, then she can be divorced and she loses her ketuvah. Those are grounds for divorce without a ketuvah. So now our question is, if a woman does violate such examples, and she loses her ketubah, does she first need to be warned? The husband has to come and say, listen, I see that you are not covering your hair, so here's a warning, right? You better cover your hair or else. And then we'll see if she continues to act that way or if she changes, right? Is there a warning required? Or even without warning, the husband can say, I've seen that you've been doing this, and therefore you are divorced and you lose your ketubah. Mi amrinan kevan dobedet al dat hi la ba'ya hatra'a o diamati ba'ya di hadraba ti hadarba. Here's the 2 sides. Do we say that since she already violated this prohibition, this requirement, so she does not require hatra'ah? See, it's not the same as Sotah. Regarding Sotah, if she's talking to some guy, that's not a prohibition in and of itself. It could be if there's yichud and she's acting in a flirtatious way, that could be violating dat. But dat, she's violating already something specific. And so that would, so does not require hatra'ah. She's forewarned already from the time of marriage that she, these are basic prohibitions, nida laws, the way she treats her husband. Interestingly, that does not include all prohibitions. Like if she violates Shabbat, that will not be grounds for divorce. It'll be grounds for other things. But that is specifically items that will that affect the relationship between the husband and wife. And so that's why they are grounds for divorce without a ketuvah. Okay, on the one hand, she already violated something, so she does not require warning. Or do we say we should give her a warning because maybe she'll repent, and so give her a chance to repent. Maybe she didn't realize that this was bad. Maybe she didn't realize that her husband is taking this seriously, and so give her a warning first. Okay, that's the question. And so we answer, Tashema, Arusa v'shomeret yavam lo shotot velo notlot ketubah. Mishtahu de la shatya ha'aknuya maknila lemai lav lafsida ketubata. So maybe we can get an answer from the beginning of our Mishnah that said, if a man is only mikudeshet to a woman's mikudeshet to a man, so they're not yet married, or shomeret yavam, or waiting for her yavam to do yibum, and during that time period she is warned and secluded, she does not get a chance to drink. She also will lose her ketuvah. She can't drink because she's not fully married yet, and the Torah says this only works if they're fully married. And so we infer from the Mishnah, okay, she can't drink, but he can warn her. So she does have the status of Sotah. It's just that because of the technicality, she can't drink to prove her innocence. But she will be a Sotah. So Sotah for what? What will be the consequences? It means that she will lose her ketubah. And therefore we see that this woman, an arusa shemeret yavam, they lose her ketubah, but in order for them to lose their ketubah, they have to be warned first. Because in Sotah, you can't become a Sotah unless you're first warned. And so we can derive from here that yes, in order for a woman to lose her ketubah, in dat would be the same as this. For some improper behavior, she has to get a warning first. That seems like a good proof But then, Amar Abaye, la leosrah alav. Abaye says, no, when we say that she becomes a sotah, that she is warned, it's not regarding ketubah, but rather to create a prohibition that from now on, the arusa will be prohibited to the arus, or the shomeret yavam will be prohibited to be with the yavam, right? Because she now has the status of a sotah, and just like in marriage, a married woman who is a sotah is prohibited to her husband, and so this creates a prohibition. Maybe that's why you need the forewarning to create such a prohibition. But the ketubah, she would lose anyway for that improper behavior of secluding with a man. Okay, Rav Papa Amar lahashkota kishehi nesua kedetanya en mekanin larusa lashkota kishi arusa ava mekanin larusa lashkota kishi nesua. Rav Papa has another answer that shows that this is not a good proof. For what law is she forewarned as a sotah? It means that she cannot drink while she's arusa or shomeret yavam. But then, should they go ahead and get married, right? She's an arusa, and she goes and the arus warns her, don't be with that guy, and she is, and he says, okay, you're now a sotah. She can't drink as an arusa, but they can go ahead with a marriage ceremony. They do chuppah, Sheva Barachot, and now once they're married, then she can go drink because now they're fully married. As the Baraita says, we do not warn an arusa in order to make her drink while she's an arusa, but rather we do warn her and make her a sotah as an arusa, so that once they get married, then he can make her drink. Okay, and therefore, for either of these two reasons, there are other consequences of arusat shomeret yavam that make them a sotah. Because they're sotah, they'll be prohibited, and they will drink after they're married. But regarding the ketubah itself, that doesn't need a forewarning, and someone who's oved al dat Yehudit would lose her ketubah even without warning. There's no proof from here. So, second attempt at a proof. Amar Rava Tashma almana lekohen gadol gerusha v'chalusa lekohen hediot mamzeret unetina liYisrael bat Yisrael mamzer unetin lo shotot velo notlot ketubah mishtahu de la shatyaha kanuye makne lehu ulmai ilosran alav ha'asiran v'kaiman. So from the continuation of the Mishnah, we're going to try to bring a proof. All these are examples of prohibited marriages. They're valid marriages, but they're prohibited. A Kohen Gadol marries an Almana, or a regular Kohen marries a Gerusha or Chalutza, or a female Mamzeret and Nitina marries a valid kosher Jew, or the other way around, a valid female Jew marries a Mamzer or a Natin. In all these cases, they cannot drink because they're prohibited marriages, so we don't want them to drink and then be permitted to each other. They also lose their ketubah because she is suspected and as a sotah and doesn't have a chance to prove her innocence, so we have to assume guilt. She did, after all, do something wrong, and so she loses her ketubah. Okay, so now we know that she doesn't drink, but she can be warned and become a sotah. So for what law what are the consequences of her being a sotah if she can't drink the sotah waters? If you're going to tell me to make her prohibited to him, they're already prohibited. These are all prohibited relations. And so here we cannot say what Abaye said over here. They're also already married, so it's not going to help to give it up Papa's answer. So rather, what are we talking about? By warning her, it's going to make her lose her ketubah. That's the consequences of any of these cases becoming a sotah. We can prove from here that a woman loses her ketubah only if she is forewarned, and that would be the same if she violates dat Yehudit. She's not covering her hair. You have to warn her first before she loses her ketubah. All right, that seems like a good proof, but this also is rejected. Amar Rav Yehuda mediskarta la leosra laboel kebaal de tnan keshem shasura labal kach asura laboel. As Rav Yehuda from diskarta says there is an added prohibition. That now that she becomes a sotah, she is not only prohibited to her husband, and in these cases she was already prohibited to her husband, she is also prohibited from ever being with the suspected adulterer. Let's say that husband, let's say they get divorced or he dies. She's not allowed to be with that suspected adulterer either. And that's a new prohibition that is created because she is a sotah. So there is another consequence, and maybe losing her ketubah, that maybe she would lose her ketubah even without warning. And so we have, again, no proof. And so we try again. Amar Rav Chanina misura tashema ve'elu shebetin mekanin lahen mi shenitrachesh ba'ala o nishtata o she'achabu shebet hasurin ve'lo lahashkota amru ela lefosla miketubata shema'mina ba'eh hatra'a shema'mina. This is a successful proof, again, from the continuation of the Mishnah that says, if a man is incapacitated or incarcerated or deaf, and so he's not capable of bringing his wife and warning her and making her a sotah. However, the court sees that she is behaving the wrong way and she's spending too much time with a certain guy and in a suspicious manner. So the Bet Din can do the process for the husband and make her a sotah. For what law? Not to make her drink. She can't drink when the husband is not around, but rather to make her lose her ketuvah. So here in this section of the Mishnah it says explicitly, by making her a sotah, that's how she loses her ketubah. We can learn from here that she would not lose her ketubah otherwise, just because she's doing some suspicious, flirtatious activity, or even prohibited of doing yichud with another man. That by itself would not make her lose her ketubah unless she's warned. When she's warned, then it becomes a sotah, then she loses her ketubah. And so we can learn the same would be true if a woman violates dat Moshe or dat Yehudit. She first has to be warned. Stop doing that. Only if she continues after she's warned and doesn't make teshuvah, only then she loses her ketubah. Okay, good. So we have a good proof at the end. Now we wonder about the first two attempts. How come the first two attempts didn't just bring from this example? This is so clear, right? It says so it's almost explicit here. You just have to assume that you can apply it to dat Yehudit, but why not? So why didn't they learn from here rather than from the other clauses of the Mishnah that they brought? And the answer is because in this case the husband is not around, and so she has no fear of her husband. It's the bet if husband is in jail, or he went insane, and so she's not afraid of her husband, and that's why she goes and is with this man. In that case, you might say that the Bet Din steps in because the husband is around. So maybe in that case she needs a warning because the fear of her husband is not on her, and so she thinks she can do anything she wants. And so we say, no, the Bet Din comes and says, oh, we have our eyes on you, and here is a warning. So maybe only in that case she needs a warning. But you might have thought when the husband is around, it's different. Then the husband is like his existence, his being there with her all the time, is itself a warning, and so she would have to know. She doesn't need to be warned, and she would lose her ketubah even without warning because the husband is there. So we might have thought that. That's why the other two opinions were trying other cases where the husband is around, and nevertheless it needs a warning to become a sotah and to lose her ketubah. In the end, those proofs were not convincing for other reasons, and so this is the best proof. But we just explained why they didn't immediately go to this proof, because there is something lacking in this proof. You could make an argument against it. Okay, that was the first dilemma, and now the second one. Overet al dat verasa ba'al lekayema, mekayema o eno mekayema. Now that we established that you do need a warning. So now the next question is, let's say a woman does violate some dat, she's not covering her hair, but the husband says, I don't care about it. I want to keep her anyway. I don't want to divorce her. Does he have to divorce her? Or can he remain married to her, even though she is violating such a requirement? Do we say that the whole matter depends on the husband's objection, and therefore, if he doesn't object, then the law doesn't apply, and she can do whatever she wants. In the case of nida, they're still violating a biblical law, but the point is that he doesn't have to divorce her and give her a ketuvah. He would have to do something because he's not allowed to violate nida, but it's easier case to understand that she's not covering her hair, and he says, I don't care that she's not covering her hair. Or do we say, since the Torah objects to this, right, or the tradition of the sages objects to this, so then it's as if he objected, and he has to divorce her without a ketubah. So this is a good question, and we answer it. Hashema ve'elu shebetin mekanin lahen mi shenitrachesh ba'ala o nishtata o shechabush bebet ha'asurin ve'i amat rasa ba'ala kayema mekayema avdi betin midi dedilma la nichale laba'al. We can derive an answer from the same section of the Mishnah that we just quoted, that the Bet Din steps in for a man who is deaf or incarcerated or incapacitated or incarcerated. And Bet Din makes her a Sotah. Now, if you say the first possibility that the husband can forego and say, I don't care, I want to stay married to you, and I don't care about I don't care that you're violating this dat Yehudit. If you say that, then would the Bet Din do something that perhaps the husband does not want the Bet Din to do? It doesn't make sense that the Bet Din would do something for the husband if the husband himself may or may not care about that, right? So if you say that the husband can forego this requirement, then the Bet Din should not be able to step in and act on behalf of a husband, because they have to check with the husband first, and the husband is not around. So then the Bet Din should not be able to act on his behalf. And the answer is Tama debilta kevan doberet al dati menach nichale. No, and we follow the stam in ordinary situation. Since she's violating this precept, then we assume that the husband would want to divorce her, right? Most husbands want their wives to follow the regular procedures, the regular requirements, and therefore that's our presumption. If the husband is around and he's an unusual guy and he doesn't care about this, then fine, he can stay married to her. We're not going to force him. But if husband is not around, we're going to assume that he follows the standard case of a husband that would care. And therefore, the conclusion is that actually, if there is a particular husband that doesn't care, then he does not have to divorce her, right? Only if he does. And the only reason that the Bet Din acts on his behalf is because we have a presumption that most husbands would care. But if husband doesn't care, then he does not have to divorce her for violating dat. Next, last question. Baal shemachal al kinuyo machol o eno machol. Let's say a husband warned his wife, don't seclude with this guy, and then he retracts it. He feels bad. He says, you know what, I don't want to go down this path. I don't want you to be a Sotah. And so he retracts it. Can he? Or that's it. Once he starts the process, then it goes ahead. On the one hand, on the one hand, do we say that the whole matter depends on the husband initiating the Sotah process by giving her a warning, and since now he wants to retract and stop, so then it stops and she's no longer a Sotah? Or Dilma kevan dekanele meikara lamase machile. Or do we say that since he warned her originally and now he cannot retract it, he started the process and now it's going to have to go on its way, and then a witness will come and see, or two witnesses, and see that she was alone with the man, and then she's going to be a Sotah, and that's it. Once he starts, it goes on its own. That's the question, and here's an answer. Tashema ve'elu shebetin mekanin lahen מי שהתחרש בעלה או נשתתה או שהיה חבוש בבית האסורים והיא אמרת בעל שמחל על כינויו מחול עבדינן מידי דעתה בעל מכיל ל. So, from the same clause of the Mishnah that says that a Bet Din can step in and be a proxy on behalf of a husband who is incapacitated or incarcerated, and they can issue the warning and make her into a sotah. Now, if you say that a husband can forego and say, you know what, I withdraw the warning, so would the Bet Din ever do something that the husband can then go and retract it? That would not look good for the Bet Din, right? If the Bet Din comes and says, hey, you're warned by your husband who's in jail that you better not do this. And the husband gets out of jail, says, no, it's okay, I don't care, right? So then the husband's going to undo something the Bet Din, and so the Bet Din would not do something that could then just so easily be retracted. So it must be that the husband cannot retract it. And the answer is Stamad Milita Adam Maskim al Dat Bet Din. Again, here we assume that a person will agree with the Bet Din. If the Bet Din said, "Listen, your wife, while you were incarcerated, she was secluding. She was with this man, and we warned her, and she secluded." We assume the husband would say, "Oh, thank you, Bet Din, for looking after my marriage," and therefore a Bet Din would in fact go ahead and do that, even though husband technically could withdraw. And so here we are left without a solution, and it could be that the husband very well is able to withdraw his warning. All right, so we try a second answer. Tashema. Umosrin lo shene tamidachamim shema yavo aleha baderech. V'yemat bal shemachal l'kinyo machul lehaleye l'kinuye v'libol. The Mishnah above said that once a husband warns her and she's secluded, he takes her to a local Bet Din, and then the local Bet Din will assign 2 sages to go and escort them on their way to Jerusalem, because we want to make sure that the husband will not have relations with his wife on the way, because she's a sotah and they're not allowed to be together. And so now we wonder, if the husband can forgive his wife, then why do you need these 2 people to go and make sure that they won't be together? If you say the husband can forgive his wife, then he can just forgive his wife. Let's say on the way, he decides, you know what? I love my wife and I want to be with her. So he can just forgive the warning, and now it will undo the sotah status, and then they're permitted to be with each other. So why do we have to send 2 sages to escort them, chaperones, to make sure that they have no relations along the way? If the guy decides he wants to have a relation with his wife, and that indicates he is forgiving her, then he can do that, forgive her, and then he's permitted. There's no need to have the witnesses, and therefore must be that he cannot forgive her. And if he comes and says, you know what, I changed my mind, I want to forgive her and have relations, the sages are there saying, no, you're not allowed to do that. So this is a good proof. And we answer, and we answer, no, why do we send 2 sages? Why don't we send 2 bodyguards, right? Just make sure that they're always separated. No, we send 2 sages because they're learned, precisely so that if they see that the husband is cheering up, and is not angry at his wife anymore, and he wants to have relations with her, the Talmid Chachamim will give him legal advice and say, listen, you can forgive your wife, undo the warning, undo her sotah status, and then you can be with her, and you'd be permitted, and everybody can just go home. That's what we send sages, precisely because he can forgive his wife, and the sages are there just to make sure that he forgives his wife first, and only then has relations. Right? They have to tell him that this is the procedure. Okay, so again, we send the sages not necessarily because it's prohibited. Maybe he can forgive his wife, so there's no proof yet. And so we try again. Tashema damar Rabbi Yoshia. Shelosha devrim sachli ze'ira me'anshe Yerushalayim. Baal shemachal al kinuyo machol. Vezaken mamre sherasu betin limchol lo mochalin lo. Uben sorer more sherasu avi ve'imo limchol lo mochalin lo. What an amazing statement that Rabbi Yoshia says. From the elders of Jerusalem once told me the following laws, that if a husband who made his wife a sotah, and now he wants to forgive the warning, he can forgive her and undo the warning. Also, zaken mamre. This is an elder sage, respected sage, and he goes to the Sanhedrin, and the Sanhedrin says the law is a chayav. and then he goes back to his town, and then he goes again. He says he rules against the Bet Din, against the Sanhedrin, and he says this is mutar. So that Zaken Mamre, he deserves capital punishment for going against the Sanhedrin. Okay, because this is, we have to establish authority of the Sanhedrin. However, let's say the Bet Din says, listen, even though you went against us, we forgive you. We don't want to kill you. You're our old pal. We studied together when we were in yeshiva years ago, and they decide not to kill him. It's okay. They can forgive his rebellion. That's the second. And the third law is Ben Sorer More, right? They have parents that are fed up with this rebellious son who is doing all kinds of awful things, and they bring him to Bet Din, and they say, our son is rebellious, and they hand him over to be to get capital punishment. And then at some point they say, you know what? We change our minds, right? And we want to forgive him. They can forgive him, right? In all three cases, it's all up to the person that was, to whom wrong was done. Even though they're starting an official process, they can stop the process and forgive. So that's a clear answer that yes, a husband can forgive his wife. Now the tradition continues. Uchshebati etzel chaverai shebadarom al shenaim hodu li bal zaken mamre lo hodu li shelo yirbu machloket b'Yisrael shema mina bal shemachal kinyo machul shema mina. When Rabbi Yoshia came to his colleagues in the south, they said, oh, very interesting. Thank you for that tradition about these three items. We agree with you regarding two of them, but not on the rebellious elder, because we cannot have machloket. The word machloket can mean either controversy or factions, right? Multiple groups. We cannot have factions in Israel. That's the better translation here. And we have to have some amount of unity and therefore uniformity. And so the authority of the Sanhedrin, it's not up to them to forgive, to say, oh, okay, we like you, we don't want to press charges. No, they can't do that, because this elder who's going against the Sanhedrin is now creating his own legal system, his own group, and they're all going to decide that this thing is allowed when everybody else is not allowed, right? Imagine if it's about a serious issue, about marriage laws or calendar issue, and he's going to go and celebrate the holiday on one day and everybody else on a different day. You can't have that. It's not about the personal feelings. It's about the legal system. And we do not want to have multiple opinions and multiple groupings in Israel. And therefore, the Bet Din cannot forgive the Zaken Mamre. They have to kill him as a warning for anybody else. However, the other two, they agreed with. So therefore, we can conclude that a husband, in fact, can forgive his wife and the warning and undo her Sotah status. So there we go. We actually have a good source that yes, he can. Now, Peligi barav achav rabina. Chad amar kodem sitira machol, achar sitira eno machol, v'chad amar lachar sitira nami machol, mistabera keman damar eno machol. Even though we just said he can do it, now the question is precisely in what case can a husband forgive his wife? There's a machloket between Rav Acha and Ravina. One of them said, only before she secludes herself, then he can forgive, but not after the seclusion. In other words, the husband goes and says, I see you spending too much time with that guy. I'm giving you a warning. You better not be secluded. And so before she actually secludes herself, he says, listen, I withdraw. I don't want to start down this path, right? It's fine. It's nothing. So then he can do it. However, once she secluded with him, now she actually did something that was a problem. She was warned against this action. She does that action, so now it goes ahead by itself, and he cannot undo it. That's one opinion. The other opinion is more lenient and says, even after the sitira, even after she's secluded, and they go and they're on their way and they're in Jerusalem, even at that point, the husband can say, you know what, the point was taken, you got the message, and I forgive you, and I don't want to go ahead and make you a Sotah anymore. Yes, he can undo it. And so there's two opinions, and the Gemara says, it makes sense to say that it is not retracted after seclusion, right? Once you go that far, he warned her, and then she secluded. There's something wrong here, and we have to suspect that maybe they sinned, and if they did sin, they're prohibited to each other. So the court has to come in. It's not up to him to say I don't want to I withdraw the charges. I don't want to press charges anymore. There might have really been a sin here, and so we gotta get to the bottom of it. So at that point, she's sotah, and even the husband cannot withdraw it. Before she secludes, okay, nothing happened. So then only then he can undo it. Okay, mimai. How do we know this? Medika mehadere Rabbanan Rabbi Yosef. Detanya Rabbi Yosef Omer Ba'ala neman aleha mikal vachomer. Umani da shehi bekaret Ba'ala neman aleha. Sotah she belav lokol sheken. So we can derive that this makes sense, that the husband cannot withdraw after the seclusion. We can derive this from the following conversation in a braita, where the Biose says a husband is reliable regarding his wife, and you don't have to send two Talmidei Chachamim on the way as they're traveling from their city to Jerusalem. You can trust that the husband will not be with the wife. He knows it's prohibited. And how do you know we can trust the husband? We can make a kal vachomer from nida. Nida, that prohibition is karet. That's a very serious prohibition, and even though it's so serious, a husband and wife are allowed to be together in their home, in their bedroom, and no, we don't need chaperones to make sure that they will not have relations. Rather, the husband is trusted, right? We trust them; they're not going to violate nida. And sotah, the prohibition of a sotah being with her husband, is less. It's only a love, so all the more so we should believe him. If it's a lower prohibition, right? If it's a bigger punishment, then you want to be more careful. So if we're not careful and we don't have a chaperone for that, we certainly don't need a chaperone for a lower level prohibition. That's what Rabbi Yosef said. But the other sages who said you do have to send chaperones, amru lo im amarta benida sheken yesh la heter toma besotah she'en la heter. You can't compare the two, because nida, they will be permitted, and so a husband, we can trust the husband that he's not going to sleep with his wife when she is nida, because he has in mind, I'll just wait a few days and then she'll be permitted to me. I'm not gonna violate. In that case, he's trusted. But in case of sotah, where she will never be, if she's innocent, then she'll go back, right? But if she's guilty, then she will never be permitted to him. And in case where he doesn't have in mind, I could just wait a few days, there we cannot trust him. So actually, sotah, there is less reason to trust him than in nida. Nida, we do trust him, but sotah, not. Okay, what do we see from here? Since we say that a sotah is a case where she may never be prohibited, never be permitted again, well, if you say that even after seclusion, a husband has a right to forgive his wife, well then she can always be permitted to him. He can always say, you know what, I could forgive her, and then she'll be permitted to me. And therefore, this wouldn't be true, right? A husband would have in mind, so should I have relations with my wife who's sotah on the way? Well, you know what, I'm not going to, because I know it's prohibited. And tomorrow, if I want to forgive her, right, or a few days, anytime, I can forgive her, and then I should be permitted. And so this would not be true if the husband actually could forgive her. Rather, this statement of Rabbanan would only make sense if the husband does not have a right to forgive his wife after the seclusion. And that's why the Rabbanan say, sotah is permanently prohibited to the husband. That's why we cannot trust him. All right, and now we get to the next section of the Mishnah that said, Metu ba'alehen ad shelo shatu bet shamai v'chule, in a case where the husband makes his wife a sotah. And so they're going ahead with the process, but then the husband dies. So now what? This is a machloket. Bet Shammai says that she can collect the payment of the ketubah and does not drink. Right? She can't drink because the husband is dead. Therefore, well, she says, listen, I would drink, right, if I could, so I get the money, right? You go prove that I'm guilty. Whereas Bet Hillel says, no, she does not collect it, right? Because she was made a sotah, and now that the husband is dead, it's a problem because she can't drink. The Mishnah actually says she can drink or forego on her ketubah, which literally sounds like she could drink since she's already on the way. But as she explains that, no, since the husband is dead, so now we can't continue with the Sotah procedure. So she can't actually drink and she can't prove her innocence. So we presume guilt and therefore she loses her ketubah. Okay, b'may kami palgeh. So what's the source of their machloket? Bet Shammai sabre shetar omed legabot kegabui dameh. Bet Shammai says that anytime you have a loan document that's ready to be collected, right, the due date is up and it's been authorized in Bet Din, and you have the document that says this guy has to pay. It's as if it's already collected. And the application here is that she has a ketubah document, right? And she deserves the ketubah. And so now, in the meantime, there was some procedure of Sotah, but he died, right? And so now, who has the need to the burden of proof? It's the inheritors that have the burden of proof, because she has a ketubah document, and that is a loan document that is executable. It's as if she already collected it, even though physically she doesn't have the money in her hands. The money is in the hands physically of the inheritors. Nevertheless, we consider it as if she already collected that ketubah document. It's like having a certified check. So because it's as if she already collected it, so the burden of the proof that she is guilty would be on the inheritors. Let the inheritors come and bring two witnesses that say that she sinned with that other guy, the adulterer, and then they can get their money back. But if they can't prove it, then she gets the money. They have the burden of proof. Bet Hillel says that's not true. In general, even if you have a loan document that's ready to be executed, as long as the money was not actually transferred, or the item or the land was not actually transferred, it is not collected, and therefore the money is in the possession of the inheritors. The burden of proof is now on the wife to prove her innocence, and therefore she's going to lose out her ketubah, because she will have a difficult time proving her innocence without drinking, and she can't drink because the husband isn't around anymore. So that's why Bet Hillel says that she loses her ketubah. All right, and we have one last halacha that we are going to begin, but that we'll discuss much more tomorrow. Me'oberet chabero vechule. It's really, we're on the vechule here, right? The Mishnah did talk about a case of a man who married a woman while she was pregnant from a previous marriage, or she was still nursing from a previous marriage. That was one machloket. But now the focus of the following discussion is on the next machloket in the Mishnah, which is about a woman who cannot procreate. Either she's elderly or she's incapable. Maybe she had an injury or a disease, and that makes her unable to become pregnant. Or an ailonit. An ailonit is a woman who has not developed. She has some masculine features, some kind of a hormonal issue. So in all those cases, we had a machloket, and Tanakama said that this marriage is prohibited because a husband has to have children, he has to fulfill Peru Urvu, and he should not be married to any of these women who cannot bear children. And therefore, since this is a problematic marriage, if she becomes a Sotah, she cannot drink, right? We would rather that they get divorced so he can go and marry someone and have children with. However, it'd be Elazar in the Mishnah disagreed and said, listen, the husband, he can fulfill Peru Urvu from a different wife. If he had already fulfilled Peru Urvu, then that would be okay. He could marry an elder man who already had Peru Urvu. He can marry an older woman, right? There's no problem with that. And therefore, this guy, he can marry another wife, and so therefore, this marriage with the Ailonit or Zekena is perfectly fine, and therefore, if there's a Sotah issue, she can drink, according to the Bi'el Azar. Now, Amar Rav Nachman Amar Rav Bar Abu Machloket Bakara Uzkena Aval Ailonit Divra Kol Lo Shota Velo Notelet Ketubata Shene'emar V'niketa V'nizra'a Zara Misha Darka Lehazriya Yas'a Zo She'en Darka Lehazriya. So Rav Nachman limits this machloket and said, yes, there is a machloket regarding a woman who's barren, let's say because of an injury, but once at some point in her life she could give birth. right? She has, the whole proper biology that she could give birth, she could become pregnant. Zekena, who, when she was younger, was able to get pregnant, and now she's older, so she cannot anymore. In that case, there is a machloket. That's where the Elazar says that they can drink. This is a perfectly legitimate marriage. The guy has to do pruvu. He can do that with another wife. And so if they become a sotah, they can drink and prove their innocence. That's the machloket. However, regarding Ailonit, even Rabbi Elazar agrees that she cannot drink. He agrees with Tanakama, and she loses her ketubah. Why can't she drink? Because the pasuk says that if she drinks and she's innocent, then she will be cleared. There will be no punishment, and she will be able to conceive seed. She'll be able to get pregnant. So the Sotah law, ritual, the drinking ritual, can only apply to someone who is capable of bearing seed, and at some point in their life, right? Somehow. However, someone who never was able to, because they have just a fundamental biological issue, which is the Ailonit, since they are not within the category of someone who could get pregnant, therefore the law of drinking of the Sotah waters does not apply to them, and even Rabbi Elazar would agree to that. And tomorrow we're going to see some challenges to this limitation of Rav Nachman. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen ve'amen.